not mistaken, let me see, it like over 20,000 households did not have access to internet. So that was a problem
Right.
right there.
And
And
look,
let me
And
add
go
let
ahead.
me add this also, Chap, that one thing that people often like exclude when they think about digital equity and inequity is um, kind of where I come in. The idea that not everybody has access to a computer or a cell phone. You know, I work with the unhoused population. Like, we're struggling to figure out how to keep their cell phones charged. And during the pandemic, so many things transitioned to just being available online that a huge population was excluded because, in some cases, households only have cell phone access and there was no
mhm,
mobile, alternative. You had to use a desktop computer of some sort. So thinking of the the instruments and the tools that people use, while including the modem, the router, are these things up to date? Are they going to be able to handle broadband, or is it an upgrade and a learning opportunity for the person whose house it's going to go in? So even when, the opportunity exists, is everybody really going to have access? So go ahead, Charlene.
So,
yeah.
real quick to compare, I'm sorry, because I have one more fact I'm dwelling on because you said about 20,000 homes did not have digital equity.
More, actually more than that, because
Okay.
it's so it's a wild number because me, I wasn't even aware just how that it was that many.
When
And
it comes
so,
to it, listen. So much of Baltimore's population is under HUD,
Hmm.
housing facility. So when we take just the HUD population, 40% of those people have no digital access.
Right.
35% of those people are underutilized in their access, meaning they probably only have a cell phone. So even if we're talking about all of Baltimore, let's just think about the housing population that we all know that exists. And those statistics are, what we have the most recent of. So there's a huge deficit that needs to be addressed.
and that's what I wanted to share is a couple more statistics. We have 80,000 kids in city public schools, and you have multiple kids in a home. Then you're talking about a significant number of people. And when we talk about our kids, if you're not from Baltimore and you're watching, you don't understand. 90% of those enrolled are labeled as minority and people of color. So those are some of the stats to go along with
But
your
to that
comment.
point, if it's me and my two sisters and we all have to use the same computer to do our homework,
Hmm.
like, that's another inequity. That's another access issue because now we have to use this one device between three people.
Hmm.
Where, in some houses, there's multiple computers. Like, most of the people in my immediate family, we have multiple computers in our family. So to think about folks in that way is hard for the people who are making the decisions and putting things in place. And it's really just something that is an afterthought when people start complaining, if they even find out that the opportunity existed, because it was never something that they had access to.
So go ahead,
Absolutely.
Charlene. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you.
So just so we can get exact numbers, and this is 2020. So we're in 22. So we're still working on that. 75,000 Baltimore City households, or one in three, do not have either a desktop or laptop computer.
Hmm.
And that was around May of 2020. And then specifically, 19,000 households with children in the city do not have wireline broadband at home, or 34.7%. So that's significant in itself.
That's huge. That's huge. And so then that means that so many of those students rely on access at the school to get access to their digital connectivity, right? But
Right.
if school is closed for a year and a half and they don't have access to that, and there's limited space at the library, or there's an issue getting to the nearest library because how public transportation is, it's like all these barriers. And so, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And think about the time where you hear stories about people actually going to McDonald's, trying to plug into a hotspot on these restaurants, and it's like, what? This is crazy. This is happening in 2020, in 2021, yeah, in some cases 2022, and not because
Absolutely.
and that because we're not in this pandemic operation that looked like what it was in 2020. It doesn't mean that problems went away. And then when you're looking at how everything else is online, even just something like applying for a job or learning courses, all of these things are online. So if you don't have
But
access,
to that point, applying to the job, yes, but then obtaining a job. Like now
Mhm.
you have all these companies are going virtual, and now you don't even have access to,
Right.
those companies because you're not familiar with using a computer. You don't have access to a computer. You don't have access to the proper, devices. And so it's yet again another barrier. So there's the barrier to applying to the jobs. Then there's the barrier to attaining and then keeping the job because you need to have the wherewithal to understand, your digital connectivity.
Hmm.
Continue, Miss Charlene.
Hey, you added that part right there because I was going to cover that as well. So you're talking about the application, and then also when when you get the job, then you're looking at the fact that like the big thing was to work remotely, right? And even in our population, like maybe less than 35% of African Americans um, were able to work remotely. 35%.
That's huge. That
Yeah.
is huge. And for me, my degree is in computer science. So not to have access at home to me is just like baffling. That's crazy, right? But that is the reality of way more people than most people think. I was on 2 projects in the past year where part of the complaint was the access and the connectivity for people who had to call in or use a paper form was non-existent or an afterthought. And so in these cases, funding was available to, the larger population. But by the time everybody had access and everybody understood that now paper applications are being accepted, we're taking phone calls, we can't just do this online, again, people are marginalized. And so it's like a continuous vicious cycle, unfortunately.
One thing I'll add, go a little deeper on your stats. You said 34,
But
35%.
35%.
Well,
Were
take
able
into
to work
account
remotely.
and take into account that only 12% of specifically African Americans in America are employed right now. Well, as of like 2021. So take 12% of those who are able to work, and now you just cut that down to 1/3 of that. So you're talking 4% now that are working. That's tough. Those are tough stats.
Right.
And
And
I feel like in Baltimore, I will say, and on a positive, the silver lining is that there is a huge boom in entrepreneurship that I've seen. I've been here 44 years. I never seen people starting so many businesses now. So like the flip to the other side of it, we're not working for someone, but we're getting people are hitting these streets, and there's like so many entrepreneur programs across the city. If you got a business idea, you should have been done it. And there's like so many people doing it. They will help you. We will help you. We
Absolutely.
got 5-year-olds
Absolutely.
starting businesses, right, Quida? Am I lying?
You are not lying with the brunch pitch
mm-mm.
contest, with
Yep. And them girls
Yelp.
are doing a podcast on Saturday mornings now.
These are
Wow.
children, 5 and 7 years old, I think.
Yes. Yes.
Like, yeah. But those opportunities exist because they have access, because it's an online, you know what I mean? Like, let's continue to just see what, what digital access does for people. Like, if these 5 and 7 year olds didn't have the ability to use programs and put up their website and run their live stream, like, they wouldn't have they wouldn't have those opportunities. So these are opportunities that our poor babies right here in Baltimore, right here in our backyard, are missing out on because the infrastructure doesn't exist. Like we know, Charlene, the map for what is it? Is it the FCC? I feel like that's the wrong organization, but their map is incorrect, and Baltimore looks like we have more connectivity or something. Do you have more
Yeah,
information on
we
that? You
don't.
remember?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I can't remember the exact wording, but it was misleading, and actually not was is because no, we don't actually have the kind of connectivity that folks think we do,
And
which is why
data
this
can be
is
manipulated.
why that awareness needs to go out. It's like
Mhm.
no, we just don't have it.
And
Right.
that's why it's so important for people like you to speak up, Charlene, because so many times in my experience serving Baltimore and button heads with administration and government agencies is that they're relying on data, and data can be manipulated, and we're here screaming at the top of our lungs, no, 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 this is not what it looks like. But they're like, well, the data says this, so the budget goes here and blah, blah, blah. And so we have to make noise and say, well, that's not how it works in real life. We have to tell them because they really think they're doing some stuff, you know?